So many things is because I see them all as different aspects of one continuum, and I just could never believe that any one subject was so much more important than all the others that I should shut them out. So I learned a little bit about Tai Chi, and then my Tai Chi affected my music, and then I learned about psychology, and that changed the way I thought about Tai Chi, and I began watching people's relationships and all the musical principles and the psychological principles and the interest in the paranormal and in subtle energies all applied. Plus, I grew up in a very interesting situation. My father was a journalist, and I grew up in New York City. So what I was presented with in my home was kind of the truth behind what you read in the newspaper. The political stories which we see on television and in the newspaper do not reveal what's actually going on behind the scenes. And I think this set me up as a child to try to not believe everything that I was told, but check it for myself and look behind the surface and see if I can understand it.
My dad, too, said don't believe anything just because it's in black and white. Make up your own mind.
Right. You have to study. You have to evaluate very carefully. And a friend of mine puts it quite succinctly. He says, to believe is divine, but to believe your beliefs is stupid. So the moment you get a fixed belief, you should become very, very careful because you become locked into one system of interpretation. And because of that, you may overlook something which is really quite obvious if you just keep an open attitude in your mind.
Go ahead.
So since we're starting in all directions at once, this attitude, this idea of staying open, is one of the most difficult things that I think anyone can learn. I certainly haven't mastered it. In fact, it's the essence of Tai Chi. The idea in Tai Chi is to stay defenseless, to stay relaxed, to stay yielding and flexible. You practice this as a physical discipline and apply it in the martial arts when you're studying Tai Chi. But it's also a psychological skill. It's quite challenging to not hold on with force to an old idea. Because the moment you hold on, then you become resistant, and then something hitting you can cause pain. You have to be able to move freely like water and like wind. These are the Chinese images which they use in the teaching. Water and wind are the most powerful elements, and yet they are the softest. They're the ones that change shape, which don't appear in a fixed shape. So imagine your own mind to be like water or wind. What the Chinese were saying is that you will be more perceptive and more influential. Influential is an interesting word because it contains the word for fluent, or something that flows. You'll be more influential if you don't have a fixed, dogmatic, rigid approach to anything, including your most cherished ideas. So I think that what we're doing now, what we're going through now in terms of the confrontation with radical change as we move into the next century and into the future, is forcing us all to become more flexible. We're all...
It's a survival tool as well as a philosophical stance in this day.
Culturally, we are in a Tai Chi class. We're trying to learn to be a little more yielding. And you can see it in every level. You can see it in international relationships. You can see it in national politics. Nobody appears to be right for very long. The truth seems to move from one side to the other, and everybody has to become much more adaptable. That doesn't mean that the truth doesn't exist, but it means that the truth is probably more subtle than any one person's point of view.
And multifaceted?
Yes. So this is why in this flood of information, which Rick mentioned, which we are being covered with every day.
Inundated. Drowning with.
Which is another word about water. We're being... the flood is here. Right? We talk about Noah's flood. Well, we have a flood of information. Maybe we need to build a new kind of ark. We need to be able to float on this information without getting too involved, without trying to drink it all or swallow it all. It's not possible, and maybe it isn't even necessary. What we have to do is start to sample it as it goes by and begin to see what ideas come up again and again and again, in which direction they are pointing us into.
You're talking about pattern recognition, and I think when we get enough information on the table, you can go to a new level and begin to see patterns that were not visible before.
That's right.
And that you don't take all the bits of information in as much as look at the overall and see the connectedness of it, or see new patterns emerging.
And this is at first, very uncomfortable. We wake up every morning with a set of experiences and beliefs which we carry through the night from yesterday and the day before. We are always stepping into the new day with our understandings from the past. And these are the patterns that we use to try to interpret the moment-to-moment experiences that we have. What we need to learn and practice consciously is having a gentle and lenient and flexible attitude about our own expectations and beliefs. And there are many ways to describe this, but again, I'll use the image of water. When water flows downhill, it is obeying a pull, the force of gravity, which is telling it to move to a lower, deeper place, to come down the mountain, to get somehow to the ocean. And culturally, we are being pulled towards some kind of new consciousness, which I would call the ocean in this case. We don't know much about it. It's too vast. We have some idea. We know that something about its topography. We know something about the kind of fish and creatures we might find there. But there are many areas of the ocean that are really still completely unknown. There's this inner space on this planet. And metaphorically, inside of ourselves, there is an inner space which we are barely aware of. And this is what we're being pulled towards. Now, when water comes down a hill and meets an obstacle, it doesn't become upset. It doesn't become angry. It doesn't become belligerent and try to crack through that obstacle.
It just finds its way around it.
It relaxes. It changes shape. It fills the spaces. And it keeps following the pull. And eventually it will either flow over the top or around the sides, or in time will cut a channel like the Grand Canyon and we'll reach the ocean. And imagine this happening inside your own mind as you confront the challenges of everyday life and the rapidly changing set of concepts and techniques which we have to learn now. Everybody's back in school.
Going back to also the metaphor you're using for Tai Chi, some of those same lessons that can be applied to us in life at large. We think of martial arts as being violent. They're always portrayed in the movies, or these ninja power something or other toys as, this is a way to attack your enemy, kill them quickly. But really, Tai Chi's ultimate goal is gentleness and, I guess, defense with that softness. You once told me that the perfect Tai Chi master would be one who, when their enemy came to attack them, their enemy would forget once they saw them why they were there. And so it's really back to the level of consciousness and an attitude and that transformational. Could you speak to that a little bit? What is the ultimate goal here?
There's a state of mind which is, again, what I've started to talk about. There's a state of mind which is so open that when anything encounters it, it loses its focus if its focus is antagonistic or belligerent. If you're going to try to hit something with all your force, it helps if you see the target in front of you. If you're trying to hit something in the dark, it's very difficult for you to focus your force. Now, if you encounter a Tai Chi master, and there are very few human beings walking around on the planet today that I think qualify as Tai Chi masters. I certainly don't. I'm a student of Tai Chi, but I have seen someone who had some of this mastery. There's something about this person which is so accepting, so relaxed, so flexible, and so perceptive at the same time that it becomes very hard for you to focus your thoughts in an antagonistic form towards this person. When you look at them, you don't want to hit them because your mind simply goes into an open state. And that's
like
why
a tuning fork. If they're so open and pliable, then it has an effect on the observer.
Right. They do not reflect back to you anything that you fear or anything that you dislike. So your anger can't focus against them. And this is not so different than stories in the Bible of, Daniel walking into the lion's den and not being attacked by the lions. It's that same kind of centering in that individual, which expresses itself as connection with everything. Everything around is connected in the presence of that person. So all spiritual masters tend to express a piece of this quality, the quality of openness. It allows you to recognize yourself and to realize yourself, to become more real to yourself in a new way.
And to one another, too.
And to one another, right. So it's, when we talk about changes of history, changes of culture, we tend to think of it as an external phenomenon that we are observing. But if we're observing it, it's happening to us also. There's no way we can separate from this change. So whether we like it or not, the debate over the political structures, the artistic freedoms, the environmental concerns of the planet are all very, very, very personal. They involve our own way of thinking about ourselves in every case. And these are just reflections of many individuals and the feelings that they have. So for me, with all of the different disciplines that I studied, I'm really trying just to study myself, just to study my own personal psychology to the extent that I gain a little bit of awareness, a little bit of insight into why I see, feel, and act the way I do. To that extent, I can perhaps be of some use to other people. And I can't help anybody beyond where I can help myself.
Where did you go next? You said that you began the study of Tai Chi and that allowed you, that gave you a philosophical basis with which to see all your other activities, be it music or teaching or whatever else that you were doing. What were some of those other lessons that you were to apply it, and how has it changed your view of today, of people around you, the future, where we're going, what our opportunities are in the future?
Well, it reminded me all the time to see things in their interconnection and to feel the forces, the energies that were involved in activities and events around me, and to sense their impact upon my own mind and my own body. So again, the awareness that I'm talking about is not purely mental. It also has to penetrate into the physical form, into the body, into the cells, into the muscles, so that your reflexes change. The way you see changes, the way you hear changes. All the senses are amplified as a result of listening to yourself and sensing yourself more attentively. So I began to see if I could connect or apply some of these concepts in very practical ways in life. Now, Tai Chi deals with simple movement. It deals with standing, walking, turning, raising the hands, lowering the hands. It deals with balance. So every physical activity was then transformed by my study of Tai Chi. And I found that I could practice Tai Chi simply by opening a door. I could practice Tai Chi by driving my car. That the formal discipline of studying the movement was giving me a way of looking at all movement. And it certainly affected the activity of playing a musical instrument. It made me play the guitar differently, play the piano differently. How was I sitting? How were my hands moving? All of this became a kind of feedback loop, another way of applying the practice of Tai Chi. Then I wanted to see if it could be applied at the level of practical everyday business. And this is where someone like me, an artist and a philosopher, would get involved in this whole strange field of money and personal finance. It seems very alien to me still that I spend so much time studying this, but I had the feeling that if one is going to live in society and not withdraw into the forest and to the mountaintop and commune basically with the animals and the birds and the bees, where money is not necessary, if one was going to live in the city and rent an apartment or pay a mortgage, one had to deal with this thing called money, and it just seemed to get in the way all the time. It interfered with all of our spiritual notions. And I said, this must be a misunderstanding on my part. There must be a way to integrate my relationship with money with my self-development, my spiritual practice, my desire to understand. So I began looking at money as a psychologist and looking at people's way of living with money as a practice, something that they could master, and it would show in their bank account. They would end up with more money and less stress in relationship to that.
Laura Lee here on the Laura Lee Show, talking with Fredrick Lehrman. So when you decided to, I guess it's the ultimate arena. I mean, it really is the game, the battle, the where you really try out your skills and try to do it with a steady mind and not get caught up in all the nonsense, etc. One more arena, as many arenas are: physical endurance or testing or abilities, and mental meditative states, and art, music, whatever. How did you approach it? What did you talked about some of the principles, but I'm rather fascinated how you take this gentle ancient wisdom and apply it. Is this something that many Chinese do? Is it, are you going beyond the bounds of what your Tai Chi teachers would, were they amused? You must have spoken about this idea with them before you began. What were some of your tacks, the way you first decided to set up some of your tests, I guess, your exercises?
It wasn't really I can't answer that in the way that you're asking the question. I don't know what I did.
In hindsight.
What I do know is that my style of thinking is to take things which don't seem to be related and to try to see what their connection is. So my approach is integrative. I try to see the communication line between two or three vastly different languages of perception and expression. And somehow in that aspect of my thinking, these things rubbed off on each other. The Tai Chi changed the way I played music, and the music changed the way I would function as a consultant in a business setting, when I would be called in by a company to listen to what was not working for them, what problems they were encountering in their business objectives, and try to find out in my language what was out of tune. Why wasn't this group playing together? Who wasn't counting right in terms of rhythm? I would apply a musical metaphor to the business situation. I would apply a Tai Chi metaphor or a martial arts metaphor to the business situation, crossing one world with another. So I don't think I sat down and created exercises or systems which were
You just came in with a whole new way of thinking.
Everything I knew affected everything that I did. And I really think that that's what happens for everyone. That's the way we all are. You see, our education tries to tell us that we must specialize. But each individual is different. Some individuals have a natural tendency to specialize and spend their whole life focusing on a more and more specific area of study, of learning, of activity. And other people have a very different temperament, and they are generalists. So I would say that I've specialized in being a generalist.
I would say I'm a generalist as well. So tell me a little bit about did you make up, some of the rules of attitude of what you've learned? Did you write them down? Did you express them?
Well, if I found something that worked or that seemed to make sense or that was practical, I would use it as a piece of information which I would offer to others. It seems that everything that I learned, I eventually began teaching. And teaching for me was several things: a way of sharing what I knew and a way of finding out what I knew.
I see.
When a student would ask a question, then I would find out whether I had an answer. And if I didn't have an answer, I'd have to go think about it. So I educated myself, in a way, by teaching. And of course, one has to be willing to be embarrassed at times and not have an answer. And in a sense, not to know. And a friend of mine, again, said it once very well. He says, "He who does not know that he does not know, truly does not know." But he who knows that he does not know, knows. It's a kind of a little joke in words. But if you think you know, then in a sense you have already drawn a line around yourself, and your learning is diminished. If you take the attitude that you don't know everything, then you continue to learn and you make discovery.
Back to that water metaphor, if you think that you're already full up, there's no room for any new input.
That's right. So throughout the ages, different different traditions, different sages, different poets have said it in their own way, and it's always the same lesson, which is be humble, stay open, and let in what is new.
And here's another water metaphor for you. A friend of mine says, rather than the question being, is the glass half full or is the glass half empty? He says, well, the glass is just too darn big.
I remember once seeing somebody confronted with that question, is the glass half full or the glass half empty? He didn't answer. He just took the glass and drank the water.
Another good response.
This is more of the Zen master approach.
So, then what did you do? What were some of your adventures or lessons, or how did they pan out?
Well, in a biographical sense, I had been a professional musician, and at a certain point I gave up that effort, that struggle, which had consumed me since the age of 10 and all the way through high school and university, where I'd studied music and practiced the guitar and thought that I was going to be the next, perhaps, Andres Segovia, the next great classical guitarist. I reached a point where I saw that I would never, ever play like Segovia, no matter what I did. And I became quite discouraged. Segovia, the great Spanish guitarist, just had marvelous hands, which would do magical things. And my hands didn't quite do those things. And I became discouraged. And about 3 years later, I found a tape in my office, which had no label on it. I put it in the cassette player to listen to it, and it was a guitarist, and I started listening, and I didn't recognize the player. Usually I could identify somebody's playing.
It was you.
And after about 30 seconds, I realized this was me, and I actually thought it was pretty good. And I hadn't heard it for 5 years, and I was impressed. I said, this sounds really good. And then I had a revelation which said, this doesn't sound at all like Segovia. And you stopped because you never were going to be as good as Segovia. And that's true. You never will be as good as Segovia. But in the same way, Segovia will never play as well as you. You're a different person. You don't play that way.
You do you best of all.
That's right. And so he sounded so good because he played like himself. And then I realized that I didn't need to play like him. I didn't need to do anything like anyone else. That if I did what I did well, that would be the strongest contribution I could make to everyone else. If we were all supposed to be the same, we'd look the same. We'd be the same. And no two people are identical.
It would also be a pretty boring world.
That's right. It wouldn't marry, I often say this, it wouldn't marry who you married because everyone would be the same. Pick anyone, it's going to work out exactly the same way. So
we'd all be interchangeable parts in a big machine, wouldn't we then?
That's right. And this is obviously not the plan. And the multiplicity has a purpose to it. We are supposed to be different. We're supposed to be individually different, culturally different. And so when we look into the future, to bring this all around back to where we started, and we're looking at the future, we're not looking at a brave new world where everybody is the same and Big Brother is watching us. I don't think that will ever occur because we couldn't tolerate it. It's not natural to us. What will be natural is for diversity and unity to come into balance. The fact that people will speak different languages, be culturally unique, and yet cooperate for a common good. That's the vision of where the future wants us to go. I don't know how long it will take us to achieve that to some degree, but we are moving in that direction.
I think that's maturity. At some point, it's also what nature practices. A biological system that is biodiverse is stronger than a monoculture. It withstands things better. It takes things in its stride. It's a better survival mechanism and strategy. And we'll come right back with Fredrick Lehrman. If you have at any point in this discussion, something to say, go ahead and give us a call. And we'll discuss into the future some of the strategies. I guess this is really a discussion about strategies of mental techniques, of mindsets, of worldviews, of paradigms for the future to prepare us to better withstand it, to be staying on our feet, to be ready for anything that comes around, and to, I think, also enjoy it to its maximum. I'm Laura Lee.
KVI. At Heart Foods, we don't miss a beat. We take your health to heart. Heart Foods knows Cayenne.
Laura Lee, and this is the Laura Lee Show. Thanks for tuning in tonight. Our guest, Fredrick Lehrman, is talking about deep philosophy, one of my favorite things. I think that so often in the world today we forget to talk about how do we sit with ourselves, How do we perceive the world? How do we look at the world at large and our place in it? And I think it's very, very instructive. And when you have a sound philosophy by which to view life and your place in it, then everything else, I think, starts to fit in a little bit better. There's less confusion going on. Besides, this is such fun stuff to talk about. Fredrick, let's go to the telephone and talk next to Richard joining us. Hello, Richard.
Hi, Lorley. Interesting guest. I was wondering, I've got a question and observation. The question, I was wondering if this Tai Chi is in any way related to the Tao Te Ching.
Yes, it's intimately related with it. The Tao Te Ching, which was the book of short teachings by the Chinese philosopher Lao Tzu, talks about this philosophy of nature, of going with the flow and of yielding and of changing and of not trying to control with force. And Tai Chi is the physical practice which is based on that philosophy. So the Tao Te Ching came first, and the practice of Tai Chi as a formal exercise came much later, around the year 1200. And it evolved out of a system of Chinese exercise. You know, Chinese culture has always thought that any cultivated person should practice a set of disciplines, including calligraphy, poetry, painting, study the classics, and practice a martial art or some kind of physical training. There was a series of exercises based on the movement of animals. And eventually the Taoist monks, and the specific Taoist monk who was credited with starting the practice of Tai Chi Chuan was Chang Sanfeng in the 12th century. Whether he really did this or not, we don't know, but he's the one who gets the credit. He applied the teachings of Lao Tzu to this kind of animal exercise system. Movement of the bear, movement of the snake, movement of the crane, and adapted that into something which fit with the philosophy. Another comical statement that I once heard is that Tai Chi was invented by the Taoist monks so that when they traveled on the bandit-ridden roads of ancient China, they could go from one monastery to another without disturbing their meditation.
Yeah, I have a translation by Guy Fu Feng.
Mm-hmm.
The observation I had was about the future. It just seems to me that we're moving towards an economic collapse in the country, what with all the credit and everything. And there's these teachings in this Tao Te Ching that we've strayed so far from those that we will, no doubt, not, economically we won't survive as we are today. And if in the event of a collapse, why you have things like all these people out there that only a very few people own their own home, and if they can't make the mortgage payments, why they're going to be on the street, and this sort of thing. And very commonly when you have a social disruption like that, why you go to something that's fairly radical, like anarchy or a demand for a very authoritarian system. And I'll just limit my comment to that. If you can, you do see what I'm talking about.
I guess you're saying to contrast the Tao to Confucius. Could you explain that very divergent separation of philosophies?
Yeah, you see, I understand exactly what you're pointing out, and I do have some thoughts on it myself. But to just back up, Confucius and Lao Tzu were the two polar opposites of the ancient Chinese culture and the way of thinking about how the world should be organized. Confucius was very hierarchical in his teachings and said that you have to find your place within the family structure, and you have certain attitudes which you must hold towards older people and towards your parents and then towards your younger brothers and sisters. And the state should be organized in the same way, with an ethic of filial piety. And if everybody just took their appropriate role, then order would be maintained. And Lao Tzu took the what apparently looked like the opposite extreme, which is to say that any attempt to force anything into order is going to create resistance and is going to cause a breakdown. So one could say that the anarchist could claim Lao Tzu, but I don't think that he would have agreed with that. He would say that in order to avoid anarchy, you have to follow nature.
Well, anarchy is an attempt to impose order. Again, it's not taking a natural cue.
Imposing disorder in a way.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But it's still, it's a force. But I guess, wouldn't Lao Tzu say that you find your place from within? If every individual was centered and found their way from within, and it was a true way, then we'd all come together and the pieces would fit together.
Buckminster Fuller had a similar idea. He said that if people did what they really felt called to do and really felt talented for, then all of the needs of society would be taken care of, because we all would fit into the great plan, which we are part of but not conscious of yet.
Well, didn't Lao Tzu say that the natural order of things is diversity?
Yes, he did.
That was my understanding. He has a lot of things in there, and
yes, that's one of his observations. It's just an observation. Nature demonstrates that.
Well, and we have in modern day politics, we have this vertically structured and fully integrated society like the communists in Russia, and that would go to Confucius, who was, my understanding, was sort of the father of modern day bureaucracy, and that where you have that kind of order, then you lose the dynamics, and you get the dynamics from Lao Tzu's diversity.
There's a kind of a balance point between the two, that there's value in the Confucian view and there's value in Lao Tzu's view. I think the problem is with our interpretation of both of them. And again, this is the very subtle thing. In order to learn a discipline like Tai Chi, you can't just go and wave your arms around in any pattern that you choose. You won't learn very much. You need to have a discipline, an order, a sequence, which you use as a measurement. And so by surrendering to the discipline, you achieve freedom. You discover your own unconscious resistance. And in a way, we must learn somehow to live cooperatively, which means that each person may have to sacrifice some of their own autonomy, but what we will all gain will be greater freedom by doing that. It's a paradox, and almost every truth that I've ever tried to understand incorporates a paradox. It cannot be resolved into a simple statement which says this is the right way to do it and the other ways are wrong. There is a balance between these two tendencies, which are actually parts of the same thing. Now,
it's the dance of yin and yang. It's the dance of the inner-outer, and it's that cosmic dance again. And even nature follows a pattern and a structure. Rick Levine, earlier guest, had given us a wonderful discourse on the Fibonacci series and how nature unfolds herself, the implicate unfolds itself into the explicate, the physicalness, by following some of these basic structures, mathematical constants. And in fact, there's a beautiful book out about it called The Power of Limits. And that whole term, I kept wondering, why did Professor Dozy, retired from the University of Washington, why did he call it The Power of Limits? And really, I think it's trying to say and express in just a few words what you're talking about.
You see, in the West, we have an idea that to be free, you just have to let go and express yourself without any control.
No, that's no good.
Well, but this is a Western preference. So if you're an actor, for example, and you take a course in improvisation or in self-expression, there's a certain school of acting which says, well, just, let it all go. Just express yourself cathartically, and then you'll discover all your possible voices.
That may be one good exercise out of a number of them.
That has value.
Well,
but it's not the same thing as taking the Oriental approach, the Tai Chi approach, which would be to say, here is a bowl, let's say. Here's a vessel that has a particular shape. Now your job is to get into this bowl and fill it so perfectly that there are no gaps left, that you fit this shape completely. There are no bubbles. In order to do that, you have to become completely flexible. But if you didn't have the form to use as your guide, you might not notice your own rigidity, your own place where you can't change shape. So the paradox is that you always have yin and yang together. In order to become free, you have to have form.
Yeah, just in the Tao Te Ching, he says in there that he says, for example, what's missing is what makes something useful, and he uses the example of a room, and if it has no door, it has no windows, then it's useless.
That's right, you need emptiness.
You can bring that forward, and you can say, well, if you go and you go to university and go into some profession or whatever you call it, some technical pursuit, and you take and you just limit yourself, and you set parameters in your mind as you're going to focus. You mentioned this, I believe, it's focus more and more on less and less.
Mm-hmm.
Then eventually, according to what he says there, that you would eventually become useless. It's like that the most valuable person in the world would be the person who knows absolutely everything about nothing.
Well, when you reach the extreme of anything, it seems to pass through the eye of the needle and return as the other thing that it was trying not to be. If you try to learn everything, you end up knowing nothing. But one of the things that we don't have much opportunity to practice in Western society and in Western education is we don't do very much study of nothing. We are always studying something. Whereas in the East, they do a lot of study of nothing, study of silence, study of stillness. And because they become comfortable with silence and stillness, they can appreciate sound, movement, and the physical world with more refinement than we do, because we never stop to take a look. So we have to practice both things. That there's an oscillation, there's a wave at the level of matter, and this is something that Rick mentioned before, that physical matter is actually a process of pulsation, of oscillation, of energies and of emptinesses and of fields. We need to oscillate back and forth between action and stillness, because this is our true nature. And if we try to force either one of those, we kind of separate ourselves from the flow. We separate ourselves from what Lao Tzu was calling the Tao, or the way. I do want to go back to what you said about the tenuousness of our economic situation. Yes, that's certainly true. We are hanging by threads, many threads, not just the economic threads. We're hanging by energy threads. The other night here in the Northwest, there was a couple of hours where there was a big blackout, a power failure, which affected 8 states. And many people were asleep, so they didn't notice it. It happened sometime between 12:30 at night and 2 in the morning, but everything was turned off, and it had started somewhere in California, and a great part of the West Coast was in blackness.
That's a result of...
So if I tried to turn on my lights at 2 a.m., they wouldn't have turned on?
They wouldn't have turned on, and this radio station probably wouldn't have been functioning.
Well, that's a result of vertical integration.
Well...
A closed system.
That's right. But you see, we trust and depend. We trust this electrical grid, and we depend on it. We don't think about it. But we're hanging by this wiring of electricity, which we devised, this technology, and we forget that we were the ones who built it, and it can shut down at any time. So it's not just the economic system that could collapse, it's our energy system, our technology could collapse, all kinds of things could collapse. Now, Lao Tzu would say, yes, notice it, but don't worry about it.
Mm-hmm.
Worrying does not do anything to prepare you to respond to it appropriately.
Mm-hmm.
You want to not hold on to it. Let's say the electrical system does go down, or the economic system does collapse. What's the smartest thing to do?
Well, you just respond to it.
Yeah, but you can't respond to it.
Take a vacation and bless the fact that you have a good chance to do nothing for a few hours.
You can't respond to it if you sit there saying, my God, what a terrible thing has happened. I don't know what to do now. I can't do anything, because you're waiting for it to come back. Maybe it won't come back. So what you have to start doing quickly is taking into account the new reality. Okay, we don't have any more banks. We don't have any more money. Now what? And it's that type of thinking which is part of the training that I'm talking about, the training of Tai Chi, the training of water, the training of wind, being flexible. It doesn't mean that we should reject the system as it is. It just means we should not become attached to it or dependent upon it.
So when the lights come back on, at least you've had an interesting exercise, and you've practiced an antidote to tunnel vision.
Exactly.
Well, it's been nice talking to you. I won't take up any more of
Okay,
your
well,
time.
thanks for your call.
Yeah,
You
thank
brought some very good points to the discussion. Thank you, Richard.
Yeah.
And Brian is next on the Laura Lee Show with Fredrick Lehrman. Hello, Brian.
All right, thanks a lot, Laura Lee. I find your guest fascinating, and I'd like to throw out a comment, if I may.
Go ahead.
Okay, once that we realize that our individual well-being and our world well-being are best served by the same actions, we will, along with the 100 monkeys, be in the new age as we're told by the stars and the scriptures. I'll leave it at that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Comment on Brian's.
Well, we don't know yet what this means. We don't know what it means to be really acting together, but we are beginning to have a sense of it. It's a vague sense. It's like someone who's been asleep for a long time and begins to notice that he's not in the place where he dreamed that he was. He's not in what the scene of the dream, but he's actually waking up somewhere else. He's waking up maybe at home and in bed, or maybe waking up in a new situation, and what he thought was his reality is turning out to be a dream. Now, we are, I think, culturally in the very early stages of that. We're still asleep. We're still dreaming our old dream, which looks like the economic system. It looks like government as we know it. It looks like all the problems that we have. These things are very real. But we're beginning to get a sense of a different kind of a world functioning, which we can't do it yet because we're not awake and we don't see it clearly, but the sounds, the senses are beginning to wake up and are beginning to come into our consciousness very slowly. So like the 100th monkey, what I see in society is that little by little, here and there, like ice breaking up, there are changes which are irreversible. People are taking new ground for themselves, and once, that old line, once a mind has been expanded by a new idea, it never returns to its previous size. We are all being expanded gradually, and we're beginning to notice each other in a new way, whether this is happening through television, through films, through radio programs like this. There is a sense of belonging to an emerging openness, an emerging sense of possibility, of being able to have things work in a new way. So I do agree with you that we are coming towards unity, and the whole universe has a tendency to evolve in this direction. The universe looks like it's dispersing and looks like it's broken up into many bits. But in fact, the forces that are moving everything around in the spirals and in orbit and in the galactic movements are all affecting each other. And the gravitational force is pulling everything into higher orders of motion. Now, I'm not a physicist, and I can't give you a total technical argument for this. But I do think that you have to look at what is right in front of your nose, which is that there is the world of mechanical physics, and then there's the world of life and biology. And if mechanical physics were the dominant reality, then everything would be running down and falling apart. But when we see something start from a small single cell and then grow into a complex organism, this is an opposite type of movement in the universe. The fact that we are sitting here with this technology, with these modern bodies, which are quite different than bodies in the past, means that life is becoming more developed, more complex, and this is the opposite of the machine running down. So in terms of the emerging consciousness and the emerging sense of self, I think we are on the brink of something, and that, as Rick said, our technology is a new planetary nervous system, and once we learn how to think through it and how to communicate through it better, we will discover that our bodies are also platforms. They are not the final end stage of our thinking about ourselves. We are not going to be limited to our physical bodies in terms of how we function. We are going to be able to function in a new level, which is going to be a kind of virtual reality without headphones and without goggles. We're going to be able to do it at the level of our own perceptive faculties. And we are gradually getting glimpses of this.
Just a comment here. It seems to me that there is now a perception, because when you say look in front of our nose, when you say that we're going to find later that we are in the dark ages now, I think it's really a matter of perception is a key part of that. And I think that part of what's helping our perception is understanding that we are connected. We think that we're separate from nature. We keep trying to behave as though we were separate. But I think when we look at, say, something like chaos theory, where I know someone who's in Japan now who's trying to help them use chaos theory to help prevent brownouts, because they're maxing their infrastructure out in Japan, as we're beginning to do here more and more. But he's finding that chaos theory, understanding some of those basic principles, you can apply that and kind of avoid those things. Or we're finding that chaos theory, which I think is misnamed, it's not describing chaos, it's really describing this inherent underlying, only just now perceptible order that's connecting us to everything, and that we're following the same principles as nature. We are a part of nature, we're expressing, we're everything that we do is really following some of those same structures, but be it the growth of blood vessels or brain cells or traffic patterns or the weather, it's all following under these some basic principles that are described mathematically by chaos theory. But I think then that we're still not that different. And if we are virtual reality machines, then perhaps we are biological VR apparatus that are being operated by souls. Again, we're just imitating. Everything that we do seems to be an imitation of nature. So I think that we're kind of graduating to a higher level in nature where the whole solar system may function on chaos theory is a big part of it. We thought we were simple systems and could figure everything out by arithmetic. We're finding no, it's much more subtle, much more complex, much more of a dance that's constantly in motion. And maybe we're just graduating to the next league so we can at least talk with nature, understand these perceptions, have our minds perceive this, and therefore enjoy some of these subtleties and enjoy this diversity and unity, because now we're seeing the connectedness of everything. And the least of it would be ourselves to the greater grand whole of it. And let's talk next to Diane. Hi, Diane.
Hi. I'm a little bit out of my element, but I would like to, I've always been interested in both power and politics, because I figure everything's kind of related. And I was wondering, I've noticed that a lot of Western do, probably because they're able to keep their emotions under control, and people do, they do have power, but they don't have to use it in order to prove it. So I'm just wondering, do the Westerners fail because people know they don't have power, so they just get crunched? Why are the masters able to succeed when a lot of well-meaning people, in the Western world just get crunched because people see them as weak and, they get taken advantage of?
That's a good question. And it goes to the heart of the matter, because you see, if you believe in separation and opposition, then you have a big problem, because there's something out there that's different from you which could try to replace you, which could destroy you, which could annihilate you. And so we become, in our belief in separation, we become innately defensive and innately frightened and innately hostile. And this deep sense of our relationship with the universe around us, this one of hostility, the universe is a dangerous place for me, my survival is constantly threatened, this attitude broadcasts itself back into that universe and stimulates events and responses and situations where we do need to defend ourselves. Now, what the martial art masters are teaching, which is popularized in a show like Kung Fu, but it's interesting that it's still coming through, even in that type of a popular setting, is that if you're not separate from the forces around you, if you're not holding back from them, then they can't attack you, they can't hurt you, they are dispersed because they are not fighting with anything. It's the same thing I said earlier about my Tai Chi teacher and this idea that if you are truly in harmony, then no aggressive thoughts can arise in your presence.
They also go beyond that, and they use whatever force the enemy is attacking them with and deflect it and use it back on them, do they not?
Right. Well, if you're not separate from your enemy, then your enemy's force is your own.
I see.
And just as in the same way, if you take your hand and make a fist and then try to punch yourself in the nose, Well, it's a pretty hard thing to do, to punch yourself in the nose really with force. You're going to stop yourself. And even if you try to do it with force, you can easily slip your head to the side in perfect timing, and you will avoid your own punch. Now, if you saw someone attacking you and you didn't think of them as being separate, but you thought of them as being another part of you, then in the same way you could avoid their attack, because it would be like avoiding your own hand. If you try to slap yourself in the face, you can easily get your timing and back away from it.
How does the person reach that point? I'm sort of over my head, so excuse me if I'm asking really stupid questions.
Okay, no, it's not a
How
stupid
does
question.
a person reach that point? That's a really good question,
back
because we
to it.
want some techniques, we want some tips, we want to bring something home from this discussion, be it a desire to go join up on a Tai Chi class, which I'm being motivated to do here, Fredrick. You have to tell me where I can go.
Anyway, I'll
But hold
stop
it.
there and let you kind of discuss on your own, but as I said, I find it fascinating.
Okay, and we'll do that next hour with Fredrick Lehrman and your phone calls. I'm Laura Lee.
This is Western Washington's #1 news talk.
How do we get to this state of more unification, more perception, more relaxing with ourselves and therefore the environment of the world around us, this kind of mental state of Tai Chi? One thing that Fredrick has offered to do is give a 5-minute exercise or lesson over the radio, but we're going to do that in a few minutes, because if anyone is driving, this is probably not a good thing to do while you're driving, so I want to warn you. So if you are on the road, you have a chance to find a place to pull over, safe place to pull over, and stop your car, put it in park, and then you can let go for a few minutes and listen to this lesson. This is something we're going to experience over the radio.
Actually, what we're going to do, you could actually do it safely while driving. It will be that simple.
I don't want any accidents on
But
our
if
account,
you want
so
to pull over, you'll
pull
be able
over.
to concentrate
Just
better.
pull over. Yeah, you'll have a better experience. So we'll let you have a chance to do that in about 5 minutes. Is there anything else to say? Because I don't want Bill in Auburn to hold on forever. So let's take Bill's call next. We'll get back to the how-to. Hello, Bill.
Yes, hi, Laura. Great show as always.
Thank you.
I kind of wanted to interject at the point you were talking about, what are we, and you came up with the virtual reality machine.
Oh, yes.
In terms of
One of my favorite perceptions of who we are in the grand scheme, yeah.
Right. I think it would be that we're like co-creators.
I think so, too.
And which is unique to us as compared to the other animals. But yet, look what we are creating.
And we should be accountable for it, I should think.
Yes, or we'll pay for it if we don't.
Well, you could look at it this way. You could say that we're actually in a school of our own devising.
Okay.
Yes.
We are setting up lessons for ourselves in order to discover something. And the way my favorite way of saying it is that your life is a dream which you wrote in order to teach yourself how to wake up.
Oh, I've got to write that down. Would you say that again? Your life is a dream.
Your life is a dream which you wrote.
Or we write collectively.
Which we collectively write. Our life is a dream which we write, or which we have written in order to teach ourselves how to wake up.
And why do I get the feeling, Fredrick, that the only way out to dissolve the dream and then start the next script, or to dream the next dream, is to learn what we came here to learn? And I started going, come on, let's hurry up, let's get it, because I want to get on to the next page, personally.
Well, again, I go back to my Tai Chi teacher, who was a very wise man, and I studied with him because he was a wise man who taught Tai Chi. I wouldn't have studied Tai Chi with just anyone. It was because of who he was and what he knew that I stayed with him and learned what he had to teach. And he used to say, you will be sick until you are sick of being sick.
Mm-hmm.
And so we say, well, why are we still doing this to each other? Why are we still having wars and destroying our neighborhoods and drive-by shootings and all of the things that are going on? And his answer is, well, we aren't sick and tired of it yet. We still kind of like it in some odd, bizarre way. And, of course, nobody likes it, but then we don't stop, do we? We keep doing it. So there's an aspect of our own mind which wants more of this. And this twisted relationship to ourselves is the thing we have to become very tired of. And individuals do it at some point in their lives. A person says, that's enough, and then they straighten themselves out. Every time they do that, they set an example. And if you're talking about the 100th monkey, when enough people break themselves out of their addiction to struggle, suffering, scarcity, and fear, then the planet will go through a real transformation. And we're being pushed very hard now because the media is bringing us these images of our behavior so continuously that we are really becoming quite ill by looking at our own actions. And it's going to be time very soon for this thing to start to turn around.
So that's the purpose the media is serving, is to holding up the mirror.
That's right. It's a mirror of many of the worst things which we wish weren't true.
We don't make the distinction between jobs and work.
Well, I certainly do.
No, what I'm saying, but the general society.
The general society, I see people sacrifice themselves to their work. It's as if they become part of some big machine of society, and they sacrifice themselves to that. They lose their own lives because they have to either survive, maintain a job, and pay the bills, or because they have to serve some national or social cause which has nothing to do with themselves personally. Why do we still have weapons? Because people make those weapons.
But see, we're oriented to a job mentality, and I make the distinction between job and work. Mm-hmm. And we need to make that definition, but we don't. And then because we don't, we have all these jobs. Most people, statistically, would give up their jobs, their present jobs, in a minute if they could make a living at what it is they want to do and are willing to do.
Well, actually, that's possible. It's really possible for each person to do that.
It is, but at the same time, we have to tackle a lot of the social conditions that put us in the bondage as slave wagers.
Well, actually, I think the first step would be to look at our own internal mechanisms and choices, and I think you got to start with yourself. But now you've explained really why corporate towers are the biggest buildings around, the biggest, most elaborate, most expensive buildings around. In the old days, it used to be the temples that got all the...
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yes. I mean, that's why money is so interesting. I mean, the course that I did on prosperity consciousness tries to bring this back into balance in terms of what does this mean for your personal life? I mean, how much of your life are you spending doing a job which you don't like in order to have a little bit of relief on Friday, Saturday, and part of Sunday before the horror of Monday and back to work? I mean, this is madness, and yet we are conditioned to do this from early childhood. This may not be the natural way or the best way for the planet to operate, and maybe it doesn't operate as well as it could because we're following this system. It needs to be studied. There's another book that I have been reading, which is quite interesting, called Money and the Meaning of Life by Jacob Needleman. And he addresses this question purely a philosophical way, trying to understand why money has become such a powerful factor in our modern life. And he seems to think that it's because it's the next thing that we need to master. We really need to be on a very friendly and spiritually clear relationship with money before we are going to be able to learn how to function appropriately in the physical universe. And so he doesn't see money as a problem at all. He sees it as a great opportunity.
The next challenge, the next lesson. Let's get back to that. But first, we have people sitting by the side of the road going, okay, Tai Chi lesson, come on. Bill, do you have anything else to say? Because we're going to get back to this topic in a few minutes.
For a philosophical point, I'd like to give a New Age formula.
Okay.
It's GGP plus A divided by GP equals PCV, which is equal to I. And what that means is the gross global product of the planet plus the assets of the planet divided by the global population would equal their per capita value, which is equal to their entitlement as the inheritors of all previous humanity's endeavors.
You know what? You lost me. You're going to have to stay on hold for just a minute, and we'll come right back to you, because that's an interesting thought that we need to explore.
I got the general drift of it, but we need to go through it again more slowly.
All right, but first, Tai Chi lesson.
Okay. So first of all...
let me remind you that you're listening to The Laura Lee Show, and we're talking with Fredrick Lehrman.
Okay. I want to see if we can make a very simple discovery right now. So what I want you to do, wherever you are, is to simply think about putting your hand on top of your head. Don't do it, but just imagine it. Get a mental picture of that action. I'm going to touch the top of my head with my hand. So I'm assuming that everybody's able to do that. And now what I'd like you to do is actually put your hand on top of your head. And then put it back wherever it was before. Now, again, since I can't see you all, I'm going to assume that you were successful in doing that. And what I want you to ask yourself is, how did you do that? I gave you an image. The image involved an action, and then you did the action. But what I want you to try to explain to yourself is how you went from the image to the action. Now, if you resort to what you learned about neurophysiology, you'll come up with all kinds of language about neurons firing and chemical exchanges and muscles contracting, but this does not really answer the question. What I'm trying to put you in touch with is the mystery of everyday physical existence, that you are able to imagine something and then your body does it for you. Nobody can explain that yet. This is still a mystery. It's a mystery of consciousness. It's a mystery of life. And what the Chinese say is that the spirit moves the mind moves the qi. The qi is a Chinese word for energy, vital energy, and the qi moves the body. So if there were an interference on any of those linkages, if you were hypnotized, for example, and I had told you that you couldn't touch the top of you couldn't move your hand, and I had told you that in a previous hypnotic session, and then told you to forget about that, and woke you up, and then said to you, now put your hand on top of your head, you wouldn't have been able to do it, because there would have been a previous instruction which would have contradicted that thought. So you see, the body is moved by a focus of mind. The body also has its own intelligence and carries on many very complex functions which we haven't the slightest notion of. We cannot explain to ourselves how the body digests food. It does it for us perfectly, but we can't interfere with it consciously and tell the body how to break down the food into chemical constituents which then build new cells. So we are inhabiting a miraculous vehicle. Everyone is always saying, show me a miracle, then I'll believe in miracles. Well, you are one. You're living in one. We don't see it. The body is a miracle. Now, Tai Chi is the practice of beginning to trust the miracle. Now, in a dream, when you fly, when you have an experience of flying in a dream, is it difficult? No, you just fly. You think and you fly. In fact, every movement you make in your life is like that. You imagine touching the top of your head with your hand, and then your hand flew to the top of your head. Maybe you experienced it as heavy or as difficult. That's possible. But if you could do it at all, it happened because there was a magical linkage of energy flowing from the mind and moving the body. That energetic linkage is the focus of Tai Chi. So when you practice Tai Chi, what you're trying to do is relax, and then relax more deeply, and then relax even more deeply, so that you let the body be completely at ease and surrendered to gravity. And then you give it an idea, and you allow it to move as if it were flying in a dream. You will find that you'll be able to do that for just a fraction of a second, and then your sense of control and effort takes over, and you begin to do the movement deliberately, and you've lost touch with the magic. The practice of Tai Chi is to learn to stay in that mode of simply letting the hand float, letting the image in the mind lead the movement of the body. Now, I've simplified it tremendously so you could get the flavor of it. This is just the bare beginning. If it were really that easy, everyone could learn Tai Chi in 15 minutes. But the fact is that our habits of self-perception are so profound that it takes months, years to release the body, to give it back to its own energy, and to trust our innate intelligence, so that we become dream expressions of our own awareness. And, Terence McKenna is someone that has been quoted already tonight on this program, and he says it very well. He says, our destiny is to be released into the dream, to be able to fly as if we were dreaming, because that is in fact what we are doing, but we don't feel it that way. We think of it as struggle, as effort, as something that we have to do ourselves. And what Lao Tzu was saying, and what the Taoist teachers were saying, what the Tai Chi masters are saying, is that the energy which moves us through our lives is something which is flowing in the universe and flows through us, and it does not start with us. We do not need to make an effort. If we relax and let the river move us, we will be able to do everything, because we already are functioning that way.
There have been times, I know, in each of our lives where that has happened spontaneously, that kind of connection to our physical body where we were friends with it and inhabited it, and yet it didn't feel like weight or tying us down. And when suddenly you reach that, there's kind of an exhilaration. There's kind of a buoyancy that accompanies that kind of experience.
We move
Is that
with,
the chi flowing?
that's
unimpeded?
That's an aspect of it. We move with grace, we move with precision, and we move with great power, but without feeling effort. So there are times when in an emergency, a person will discover a strength, a physical strength which they never had access to before. A woman who's trying to save her child will be able to lift an automobile physically by herself, and be able to lift one end of a car, which she could never do in her quote, so-called normal state of mind. So we do have access to this kind of energy shift, but we find it through relaxation and through trusting and through settling back into the ocean of energy that is our true home. See, if we think that we're separate from the environment, we are deluding ourselves, because if any of us were separate, we wouldn't survive for more than a few instants. I mean, if you step out of the space shuttle in space without your spacesuit, you're not going to survive very long. You need an atmosphere. And we have been provided on this planet with the environment which supports us, so we're not separate from oxygen, we're not separate from water, we're not separate from gravity and from the support of the earth. Tai Chi simply reminds us of all of these constant conditions and tells us, relax, trust it, just let it take care of you, because it already is doing that.
And ready for more in the economic realm, applying
Sure.
Tai Chi to the economics?
Why not?
Let's go back to Bill. Hi, Bill.
Yes.
Now, you're going to have to give us that formula once again.
Okay. GGP plus A divided by GP equals PCV, which is equal to E. And
This is a variation on Einstein, no doubt, right? Just he would have understood this, right? Because you got the E in there.
which some people would hate called entitlement.
Oh, I see, instead of energy.
but
Just teasing. Go ahead. Let's translate this for us.
But think in terms of the gross national product, we have the gross global product of the planet, plus the assets of the planet.
Like all the forests and the clean water and clean air, that kind of asset?
No, anything that mankind places a particular value on, and where it would
Or
essentially
should
take.
put a bit value on. Okay.
Pardon?
Or should put a value on.
Well, we're talking
Hazel
about
Henderson
money.
says we need a new scorecard, and she says all those trees in the forest that they put on a 0 is no value actually have a great value, and that if we were to actually put those natural assets valued, then it would not make sense to rip our forests down.
That's right.
You know, we would have gone to growing hemp without the TH there. We would have gone to growing knuff or some other kind of biological biomass to use for wood or trees or whatever, or paper, rather than cutting forests, which have a value for recreation and for producing air and for being just gorgeous and
Yes.
nice to be in. So are you putting a little bit of that attitude in?
Yes.
Or?
Well, what it is to imply, what is that as the heirs of all previous humanity, which is roughly 6 billion people on the planet, as the heirs to all that previously was before us, and what we have there is the buildings were built and so forth and so on and things. So there's a value there, and if you look at that value and divided the population of the world into that value on paper, poverty would be ended.
Yes, I actually understand what he said.
Could you say it again?
Well, I'll circle around it. You're in agreement with several different thinkers who have written about this, and Laura Lee already mentioned Hazel Henderson, who believes that we are computing our gross national product based on a very, very limited set of criteria, and we're ignoring the natural resources, and we're ignoring the human resources to a great extent, which have real value. Robert Anton Wilson is another writer who has talked about the value of intelligence and how intelligence is part of our gross national product, especially now in the information age. So what you're saying in another way is that we function as if we were living in poverty and in scarcity, because there are some people with a lot of wealth and other people who appear not to have that wealth, and as if there weren't enough to go around. But what you're saying is that, in fact, if you look at what is here, what we have done and what exists in terms of the natural abundance of the planet, there is more than enough for everyone. The problem is in the distribution system. The problem is in how we use what we have. And it's not as if we have limited resources. It's just we have gross mismanagement of the resources that are available to us. And I think this is a much more optimistic and positive approach to solving the world's problems. We will get the job done faster if we look at it from abundance rather than from an attitude of scarcity.
Well, it gets back to, is the glass half full or half empty, or is it just too big? I mean, we really do have enough and we have room to grow. Maybe we could look at it that way, too.
But if we think of it in terms of access, which was a critical word that was brought in, if you had access essentially to anything that you wanted within the realm of reason, would you necessarily have to own it?
No, you wouldn't. You're right, because you see, greed is an extension of a sense of scarcity. You have to feel like there isn't enough, and so you have to become greedy and get as much of that limited supply as possible before it's all gone. But when you are in a state of abundance, or what I call prosperity consciousness, and other people call prosperity consciousness, you don't feel that sense of scarcity. You function from a sense of, there's enough for me, and there's enough so that there's some of it that I never will need, and I can share this with others, and we all become richer. And with living in an abundant society with wealthy people around me makes me richer. It doesn't make me poorer.
That brings us to the time of year that it is, and in fact, what we should be, if we want to throw shoulds in there, be living, but which we don't, because if we just shared, all that is an issue today wouldn't even be an issue. As we have 39 million Americans under the poverty line, and the poverty line happens to be roughly a little less than $15,000 a year for a family of four. Mm-hmm. And that's roughly 1/6 of this nation's population. Yeah. And if you really want to, you could probably even double or triple that number if you really looked at it from another perspective in terms of how extended people are economically, which will bring us probably to a collapse in time anyway. Which is what we were talking about, will happen and then we are vastly overextended. But again, we have to come with creative ways of perceiving how we can live, and we have abundance. It's just that we have been living with a particular distorted reality for a long, long time, which we call reality, but which is really kind of like a dream, an illusion, but that has been basically the masses, if you will, bow to, so to speak, or have to pay homage to, rather than us saying, wait a minute. Now, the Rockefeller sons, 5 of them, each inherited $30 million apiece when their grandfather or father died. I mean, that was all instant lotto day. Mm-hmm. And that was back then. So you know who they are and the power that they have. So what I'm saying, to the degree that money means anything, money is kind of ridiculous on another level. If you look at the number of dollars printed, if you look at each piece as a product, you follow me? Mm-hmm. And you divided the population into two, would they've had enough monopoly dollars?
Yes, there certainly are plenty of monopoly dollars floating around.
When you look at other little cultures who use, say, clamshells as their money, and you go, well, what intrinsic value does clamshell have? Well, look at paper money. What value could it possibly have, except that we agree that it has value, except that it's a notation except we're all in agreement that it has value, and so it works.
See, the problem is not the money. The problem is what I think you're pointing at, which is that people, in feeling separate and in feeling that they have to defend themselves, will tend to amass heavy armoring in the form of property to insulate themselves against this fear that they have that they're going to be without anything. They'll be defenseless, and they'll be poor, they won't have food, they won't have shelter. This is a fear which becomes real. Yeah. And as people defend themselves and amass more and more wealth, leaving other people to struggle and not get paid enough for the enormous amount of work that they may be doing, that fear becomes real. We see it depicted, projected in front of us, and it gives us more reason to try to be more insured against disaster and prepare more and more. But we also know that no matter how much money you have, there are certain types of disasters which are going to affect you. You can't defend yourself forever with money. Now, the other possibility is when you change your identity, when you go through the transformation, which, as I said earlier, the whole planet is gradually becoming sensitive to, very gradually. They're being pushed hard in that direction by the force of the issues at hand. When you move in that direction, there is something that happens which I call the alchemy of the personal pronoun. What I mean by that, alchemy was the practice, the science of transforming base material into noble material, of turning lead into gold. And whether it was a physical process or whether it was a metaphor for an inner process is not important. It's taking something which is heavy and dull and turning it into something which is beautiful and maintains its ability to reflect light and to represent artistic expression, which is what gold was as opposed to lead. Now, the personal pronoun, when we say I, when we think of ourselves, if we think of ourselves as a separate unit in opposition to the entire universe, that's like lead. And that makes us very heavy, and it makes us need to collect a lot of protection in the form of money, objects, and whatever we think security is provided by. But when we have gone through this alchemical transformation, and when we say I, we mean this physical body and the entire biosphere. When you think of yourself as including all the plants, all the animals, and all the other people. Then when you say I, and you try to protect yourself, you end up protecting everybody. And this is what we need to experience on an individual and on a mass level. We need to think of ourselves as including all of us. And when that happens, our way of handling money will gradually and appropriately change.
And our way of looking at the environment.
Right. And you mentioned the Rockefellers. Not all the Rockefellers are the same. Some of those Rockefeller children are doing some great things with their money and are supporting very, very important things on a quiet, personal level. And other Rockefellers are not, you see. So it has to do with the transformation of their identity.
And we'll come right back to the high quality.
Hi, Laura. 3 points for this deep philosophy discussion.
Go ahead, John.
First of all, I agree with Fredrick's point about the excessive manic acquisition of wealth and power as a individual psychological defense in the me against the universe mindset, but I don't think that goes quite far enough. I would add the aggressive side of that behavior, namely the me as master of the universe, that I conquer the universe by accumulating as much wealth and power as an individual as is possible.
There are some people operating under that paradigm definitely out there.
Well, I think it's important to include both sides of that metaphor. It's not merely defensive. It's intentional aggression against the Tao, against the natural order, against the sharing ethic. It's offensive as well as defensive.
I agree. It's a question of degree, and it's based on fear. Both of these things are based on fear. You have to master something so that it won't destroy you.
Well, I'm saying it is indeed fear, I think. Perhaps you're right, that's it at the most fundamental level, but I'm saying that it's not only fear, it's hubris, it's supreme arrogance to think that human beings, I, me, Alexander the Great, Chairman Mao, whoever, that I can conquer and be the master of the universe, which is, I think, somewhat different from fear, although maybe you're right, that's what underlies it all.
That's sort of the deep bottom foundation or soil out of which all of these different distorted lifestyles grow.
Yeah.
Well, let me move on to something I'm a little more sure of. And, oh, by the way, I want to second your admonition against ideological thinking, but I'm afraid that's exactly where the paradigm is in its latest stage, that rigid ideological thinking, certainty, and absolutisms of all kinds, the trend towards totalitarian systems is what we have now.
Well, we've had it for at least several thousand years,
well,
too, off and on.
It's cyclical. There have been periods of more free thought, of perish the notion of liberalism, like the Enlightenment. But I think now it's swinging back towards certainty, absolutism, and so forth. Well, I want to take issue with two terms that you've used tonight. First of all, anarchy as disorder, or even the imposition of disorder. That is the current paradigm. That is new think, new speak. I would say that anarchy is what it is. It comes from the Greek words an, which means without, and archon, which means rulers. And in fact, counter to the prevailing ideology, human beings live for the vast majority of their time on this planet in a state of anarchy, what the Enlightenment philosophers called the state of nature. As Laura, think about the Aborigines that Ms. Morgan, Dr. Morgan lived with. That is anarchy. It is self-actualized individuals living in a self-governed society.
I guess it would be the ultimate decentralization of power, wouldn't it? Because everyone would hold an equal amount of it for themselves.
Yes, and far from being disordered.
Collectively be one.
Far from being disordered, it's very, very conservative. If you examine those, I'm talking anthropology now, if you don't mind. If you examine those cultures, they're very conservative because they have a life way that defines their being. It's not disordered at all. It's very disciplined, to use Fredrick's term.
I think your point is very good, and it is necessary to go back to the original true meaning of words to really understand them. And I think you're right to have pointed out that my comment was based on the current, as you say, newspeak or street use of the word anarchy, which has a certain overtone to it. But what you're saying is more accurate.
Well, it's exactly propagandistic because the civilized order, the statists, the control freaks, the accumulators of wealth and power throughout history must expunge the human memory of anarchic, free peoples and free societies. So anarchy must have a negative connotation.
Yes, but let's not be fooled by all uses of the term anarchy then, if we can understand the original Greek, as you point out. What about all the terrorists out there that are preaching and calling for anarchy? They're using it in a very different term from what you're using it. So, we have modern terminology and we have the old meaning of the word. Those are two very different things.
Yes, well, it's like Christianity, Laura. Many people claim to be Christians, but I think it could be disputed very vigorously that they follow the teachings of Jesus.
You could say that about any group of people.
Pardon me?
You could say that about any group of people or any word.
Yes, well,
language is a very problematic animal.
Well,
but thank you. You brought up some very good points.
Well, let me make one more. My hobby horse, my bet more. You used the term human beings as virtual reality machines manipulated by souls. Well, I would say that's very, very insidious and dangerous old paradigm way of thinking. I would suggest that you look at it as human beings being material reality organisms manipulated by souls. The virtual reality machine is the ultimate delusion in my way of thinking.
I wasn't trying to advocate virtual reality in that statement, just using a modern splash on the scene of technology and saying, gosh, aren't we already there, in a sense? And did nature do it ahead of our thinking of it by the virtue of blessing us with human bodies?
Well,
I guess that was the angle from which I was talking on that, John.
all I'm saying is that if you're not careful, the old paradigm will disguise itself as the new paradigm, and you will think you are in the new age, but you will only be in the old age with a new and even falser face.
Our ultimate conspiracist. Thank you, John.
Well
I
said.
appreciate that. And we go next to Robert. Hello, Robert. Thanks for joining us.
Oh, hello. Good evening.
Good evening.
I find your guest very interesting, and the topics are very interesting, too. I wondered if your guest would care to possibly...
You can call him Fredrick.
Fredrick. Wonder if Fredrick could possibly consider discussing or explaining. I'm trying to learn about Qi and the relationship, comparison between Qi and what Reichian therapy calls body armor and getting rid of it by pressuring certain points. And it sounds like it might be related to what the Chinese doctors do when they try to release Qi. And I'm searching for words to describe it because I don't understand it. Is there any connection at all or any comparison?
Well, first of all, you picked up on the use of his term body armor, and I was wondering if that was from Wilhelm Reich. And now I recall you are well-read in Reich.
Yes,
so,
I've spent a lot of time studying Reich's work. Did I actually say body armor earlier?
Yeah, you did.
I guess I did. Yes, there is an overlap there, but it's not exactly the same. When Reich talks about orgone energy, the Chinese term qi definitely includes that, but it also has other levels of meaning. And every body discipline or body energetic discipline has a word that they use, whether it's prana or biomagnetism or bioplasma, as the Russian researchers have that word that they coined a while ago, or odic force, which is what Anton Mesmer talked about. All of these are biological energy functions. The Chinese system of medicine works with the qi, the flow of energy, and the system of balance of 5 elements, the wood, fire, metal, water, and earth. Each of these are different aspects or different colors or different characters that express themselves through the movement of energy. So I think when you study Reich's work, it helps you to understand qi in the Chinese sense to some extent, and vice versa, but they are not exactly identical. My Tai Chi teacher used to talk about the qi of a specific food, for example. Then he'd talk about the qi of the body. He'd talk about the qi of the breath, the qi of the blood. Each of the elements of the body had its own particular energetic character.
I see.
So it's not as general as what Reich was talking about. He talked about a general biological energy which functions at all levels of our personal consciousness, physical, mental, and emotional. The Chinese go further. They say that there's a certain qi that is appropriate to a particular group of people. There's a qi that you can describe as having to do with a certain building or place. So they're saying...
Then you get into feng shui.
That's right. They're saying when the Chinese say qi, they mean the breath or the spirit of the thing that you are contemplating. And that could be any entity or any unit or any combination of units. And the idea of Tai Chi and of Chinese medicine is to release the blockages, the obstructions to the flow of the qi. Now, in Tai Chi is a body discipline where you learn to relax physical tension. In that way, it's very similar to Reich's work, where the body armor is energy which is frozen in place in the form of muscular stress, which impedes the flow of energy through the whole body and prevents you from experiencing unity and the pleasure of the unified movement of energy without any obstruction in the body. So they overlap, but they're not exactly the same way of talking.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Very interesting. Thank you.
Thanks for the call. Profound.
It's just a pizza.
I would like to know, I guess, the overall sense of the polarity. John was mentioning earlier that in his feeling that we were getting back to this, as he called it, the pendulum swinging in a way opposite than he. I actually see a polarity happening on both accounts. I think it's like it's defining itself from both ends. This paradigm shift, as I see it, and I choose to track the paradigm that I would like to participate in, and just acknowledge that, yes, human nature has been dysfunctional. It has its shadow side. I can understand the so-called conspiracy theorists because it's just the way that human nature functions, especially when it's disconnected from its soul. This is what you get. And when people come up with conspiracy theories and all this other, and I'm using the term very broadly just to encompass, all that negative stuff, sure, no problem. I acknowledge it. I recognize it. It's the way of the world. But I also see some new order coming, some a collective reconnecting to and searching for, our soul out there and a better way of living. I see both getting stronger. What do you see?
Well, in the process of moving towards this new sense of self and new sense of the communal self, everything from the past is going to make a comeback. There will be a last play, a last stand of all of these old options, and they're going to come fast and furious, and they change radically. And one day the world's going to look like this group is taking over, and the next day it will flip and the other one will take over, and the oscillation between these different lifestyles, these different political situations, will become more and more rapid. It's a kind of a shaking motion in consciousness, which keeps you from holding on to anything very long. And the only reason that we're feeling the ride is being so shaky is because we are trying to control it. There's a quote that I like, which came out of a little book that I bought in the Atlanta airport many years ago, a little souvenir shop, and it was called, it was a little guidebook. It was called Colonel Horsepastor's Guide to the South. And it was all about how to speak with a southern accent and pronounce the words correctly when you're in Georgia and Alabama. and it was filled with little aphorisms from this Colonel Horsepastor, who was an old Civil War general, and he said, one of his great quotes was, he says, if you can keep your head amidst all the chaos and confusion, why, son, you haven't the slightest idea what's really going on. So people,
I've heard variations on
people
that.
who say, I know exactly what's going on. Now, they don't know what's going on. If you are paying attention to what's going on today on this planet, you are going to be experiencing confusion. Things are being shaken up. They're just switching around. Nobody's in charge anymore. Everything is slipping. And confusion is not such a bad word. Getting back to the roots of words, it means two things fusing together. One thing mixing with something else, and those two things don't necessarily belong together. They don't make sense together, and yet they are becoming confused. So we are in this...
your whole basis of philosophy, taking two disparate kind of items and seeing what connection.
Right.
So
we're in the mixmaster, the blender stage, and
well, when it's all in
it's
motion,
looking like some kind of gray-green, gloppy solution right now, and it's not very clear what it's going to be. But I hope it's going to turn out to be a nice cake once we cook it for a while.
I would think then that perhaps this polarity of the old order is their reaction to witnessing the new order and trying to grip even harder. Same as some say the allopathic medicine. I personally can't understand why there needs to be this battle, because it seems to me both allopathic and naturopathic or holistic have very good contributions. And again, it's the combination of the two that I think are going to be a better medicine to serve all of us and whatever needs arise. But when they say, who they is debatable, but I'm told, that's a better one, I'm told that the allopathic side, when seeing how many people are flocking to holistic and naturopathic and alternative medicine therapies, suddenly said, okay, we can't let these guys exist. They're competition. Let's try to squish them out of the scene, and started to clamp down. So I would say that that's kind of the reaction. When you know that something else is a force out there and giving you a run for it, then you respond, treating them as a competitor. It seemed to me that you could make the greater whole by befriending it and integrating it. And I guess that's the stage when you realize it isn't going to go away. When you can't fight it, join it. And I'm just waiting until we get to that stage, and many of these seeming dichotomies that we're viewing things with now, I think that could be their greatest ally. It could be, you could look at it and say, oh, that's the other half of the coin. And with that, I'll be complete. Maybe
your partner suddenly gets interested in someone else, and you get jealous. The jealousy is a reaction, which is based on fear of abandonment and the fact that if this person leaves you, you're going to die. This may not be rational, but emotionally, it's coming from a deep fear which goes right back to childhood and infancy and birth, and if they leave me alone and they don't feed me, I'll die. That's why those forces of jealousy are so strong, because they come from these very early survival fears that the infant has. And then they become quite destructive. We experience that in gentler degrees in all kinds of social change. When the people that were listening to you start listening to someone else, you feel like you're going to be abandoned, and these primitive reflexes of the psyche cloud your objectivity. Now, if you could just say, well, all right, I have a partner. I'm in a relationship with this partner. And then there's another possibility. A new person comes along that they could exchange something with and share something with. Is this going to be to their benefit or not? Rather than, is this going to leave me abandoned or not? If you look and you say, is this person going to benefit? Then you can determine whether this new option is something which you can support. Now, in the medical field, if you're a regular MD who's never studied holistic medicine, and somebody comes and says, well, I'm trying homeopathy, you may say, oh my God, they're going to leave me, and then I'll be useless. And none of that may be conscious. It may all be just a deep emotional reflex, a reaction. And you strike out against this other possibility without fully exploring it. If you were to say, well, let's see, maybe there's something of value here. I would like to become as familiar as possible with that other opportunity so I can assist my client, my patient, in finding what is going to work best for them.
Well, you could say my goal is to help them find a cure or find better health, and I'll use whatever means it takes to do that. And if I am introduced to a new means and it has some validity, then I need to find out about it, so I'll be a better doctor. That could be an equally...
You see how enlightened and objective that is. That's the way we would all like to be. But we still have these reflexes, these reactions, which are based on incomplete fears from early childhood. And that shows up at all levels of life.
Interesting. Harry's next. Hi, Harry.
Yes, thank you.
We need to hear your comment on the paradox of life.
Yes.
And then we're going to go to break.
Okay, the paradox of life.
And could you speak up?
Chinese medicine. The paradox of life is when Dr. Kildare and Ben Casey meet, you have the paradox of life.
Is anything else?
Yes, the Chinese medicine that you just mentioned. There's a great problem with Chinese medicine, which is obvious by the population of China.
What is it? Because we're running out of time. What is it?
Yes, it intensifies the sex drive.
Now, to some, of course, that wouldn't be a problem. Might be a desirable side benefit. Harry, hold on just a minute, because we're going to have to come back, and we have lots more to talk about with our guest, Fredrick Lehrman. Join us by telephone if you have something you'd like to say on a discussion talking about deep philosophy. By the way, Fredrick's course, if you're interested in getting a copy of it, 1-800-525-9000. Of course, the Laura Lee Show studios are at 206-781-4473. We'll be right back.
This is Western Washington's #1 news talk station, 570 KVI. KVI Seattle. Hot talk for the Northwest.
Here's the latest from ABC News. I'm Dorothy McIntyre.
The number, of course, is Tai Chi student and teacher, versatile kind of guy. Let's see. Let's go back to the telephones and talk next to Harry. Harry, I know what you need for Christmas. You need a new telephone.
You're probably right. Is this better?
A little bit better, but go ahead. We have some other calls to take, so go ahead right to it.
The problem with your next guest is you cannot levitate anything that is heavier than air on the radio. He can do
but
that.
you can talk about it.
He sounds like a wonderful man, I'll tell you.
Oh, he's fun. And I just had a brief conversation with him thus far, and he's just wonderful.
The basic problem with mankind which includes what your guest said about the fear from youth on and so forth, childhood. He's right, but the cause, the greatest demise is the bloodline. Bloodline.
Okay, any comments on that? Fredrick?
I'm not quite sure how you mean this idea of the bloodline.
Well, let's go on to Trent. Hi, Trent.
Hi, Laura Lee. This is Trent in Kent.
Hi, that rhymes. You're a poet.
Hey, I had a question for your guest, Fred.
Yes.
Do you know much about the yin and the yang?
Well, I remember when I asked that question a long time ago, I was trying to understand what was this yin-yang concept, and I've learned a little bit about it over the years, yes, so I might be able to help clear it up. What's your question about it?
Well, I want to know the difference between each one, and then I just want to make a quick comment. I want to say hi to my friend John and Emmett in Kent, then I'll go ahead and hang up and take your answer.
Okay.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you. The yin and the yang.
All right. Well, the yin and yang, these are two Chinese words which are used to point at a condition which exists in reality, which is that for something to exist, its opposite must also be possible or must exist. So that if everything were the same, we would have no perceptions. In the beginning, the ancient Chinese book, the I Ching, talks about, in the beginning, there was this condition called Wu Qi, and it's described, it's indicated by the symbol of just a circle with nothing in it. Wu Qi, Wu meaning emptiness, Qi meaning energy, empty energy. And then, this is similar to Genesis in the Bible, where God separates the heaven and the earth. In the same way, and then it says in the beginning the Spirit moved and everything was in darkness, and the Spirit moved above the waters. It was all kind of dissolved in a fluid where everything was the same. And when there is no differentiation, there's no polarization, you can't even think of anything. But the way the Chinese talk about it is they say that this Wu Qi gave birth to Tai Chi. And Tai Chi is the Chinese name for the symbol which we all know as the yin-yang symbol. That circle which has those two spiraling parts, the one part that is light and the other part that is dark.
Intertwined.
That are constantly in motion, rotating around and through each other.
So Qi means life. What does Tai mean?
Well, Tai Chi, the Chinese language is the kind of language where you have lots of cognates or homonyms where two words sound the same but they mean something different because they're written differently. Just like in English when we say read and read. One read is R-E-A-D, the other one is R-E-E-D. They sound the same. You only know from the context of the sentence which one is being meant in that given statement. So when you say Qi, as we were talking before about energy, that's written one way. But Tai Chi, that Qi means something different. Tai means great or extreme, and Qi means ultimate. So Tai Chi, that symbol of the yin and yang, is considered the extreme ultimate symbol which describes the condition in which we find ourselves. It means that for everything that we can see or identify, there has to be a lack of it somewhere else for us to observe it. And now, I'll try to make it really simple. If you look at some object that's in front of you right now, perhaps your telephone, the only reason you can see the telephone is because it's in that spot and it's not in all the other places. The other space around it is empty of telephone. If all you saw was telephone, you wouldn't be able to recognize it because it would look the same as everything else. But there has to be non-telephone all around telephone in order for you to see and recognize that object and call it a telephone. So,
which points out what you were saying earlier, that the empty space is just as important as the positive
that's
space.
That's right. So the yin and yang of the telephone is that the telephone is the yang, the substantial, the dense part of the existence of telephone, and the yin is everything else. It's the space where the telephone isn't. Now these constantly will change because when you move the telephone from where it is to another part of the room, you are changing the relationship. The spot where the telephone was is now empty. it has become yin. And the spot where the telephone has been moved to is now substantial. It has become filled with the telephone. So everything that we experience in physical reality is an interplay of space and of matter and of complementarity. If you say, it's awfully hot in here, that means that you know something that isn't hot, which is called cold. If all you experienced were hot, you wouldn't have a word for hot. You wouldn't even have a sensation of it. It has to be felt in relationship to its opposite. And Lao Tzu said this very clearly. If you read the Tao Te Ching, which is a book that is short and easy to read, you will see this explained very clearly. He says, in order for us to say that something is long, there also has to be something which we call short. So everything that we think, everything that is in language is a picking out of the distinction between that which is substantial and that which is empty. And that's the simplest way to begin to understand yin and yang.
It's a book I'm going to have to get, the Tao Te Ching. Back to the telephones. Mark in Seattle. Hi, Mark.
Hello. I just want to thank Fred for presenting such a cogent and objective description of just about everything he's talked about. But my question is, can he talk about his understanding of Chi's link or relationship to archetypes or morphogenetic fields?
Aha. That's an interesting question, put that way. Once again, Chi, as I'm using it in the context of Tai Chi, means energy, the energy of consciousness and the energy of motive force in the body, which are connected, which are actually aspects of the same thing, of consciousness. An archetype is a particular form in consciousness. It's a set of relationships, it's a dynamic, it's a way of arranging forces. And then we give it we visualize it in our own particular way, and each culture has its own particular symbols for these archetypes, for the masculine, for the feminine, for the creative, for the destructive aspects of energy movement. And they depict these things in their art as different images, different characters. So an archetype is that kind of symbolization process in the mind, which talks about a distribution of energies. And then it is given a particular meaning, which is also a mental quality. Now, the morphogenetic field, which Rupert Sheldrake talks about, is an energy field, which is essentially neutral, onto which we imprint patterns as a function of our thoughts. So what Sheldrake is proposing is that there is a form-generating force which can be imprinted or impressed by our conscious action or by even a mechanical action. Everything that happens leaves its traces on this energy field, which he's calling the morphogenetic field. And once that pattern has been imprinted on the field, it has a tendency to be something that happens again more easily. It's easier to do something the second time than it was to do it the first time. Once somebody runs the mile in less than 4 minutes, more and more people can do it. It gets easier because in Sheldrake's thinking, the morphogenetic field has set up a predisposition or a potential for this to happen. It's like a path has been cut. So all of these are aspects of energy, but there's certainly different ways of talking about it.
Right.
Does that answer your question pretty
Very, very good. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Good question. John is next. Hello, John. You're on The Laura Lee Show. Our guest is Fredrick Lehrman.
Hi, I have a question for Fredrick. I was listening to your other caller earlier, and he was saying something about, he asked you a question about yin and yang.
Yes.
And you responded as, with yin, I believe it was yin representing space and yang representing the space that was not filled by the yang. Yin.
Well, yin and yang are different sides of the same coin. So, in one moment, you could say that the solid object, the dense form, is yang or is substantial.
Correct.
And the emptiness is yin.
Right.
However, in Tai Chi, these things switch back and forth depending on how you look at them. So, for example, my Tai Chi teacher would say, all right, suppose you are standing on your right leg and your weight is going through the right leg.
Right.
Is that leg yin or yang? He would ask us this question.
Uh-huh.
And it felt, when you stand on your right leg and put the weight through your right leg, it feels very solid, right?
Correct.
And he said, so we would say, yes, well, it's yang, it's substantial, and my left leg, the one that isn't carrying any weight, is empty.
Okay.
And he would say, yes, that's true. That's true. But in another sense, the right leg, the one that you said was yang, has to be empty so that your weight can flow through it. So it's really yin. Whereas the weight that's the left leg that's not carrying any weight feels like a leg, a solid leg. There's nothing going on in there. So that's yang. He said you could look at it either way. The important thing is not to say which is yin and which is yang, but to see the relationship between those two aspects of reality.
Oh yeah, I mean, I definitely see what you're trying to say, but I'm not exactly familiar with the yin and yang theory, but I do know that yin represents good, the good of humankind, and the yang represents evil, and those two forces they work at each other, and they try to pull each other apart.
Well, no, I like that because usually, and I don't agree with what you just said, but usually they say that yin is female and yang is male. Well, at last, women are getting our due. It's about time.
That's correct. I mean,
go ahead, Fredrick.
You got basically. I mean, not just the respect that yin is good, yang is bad, but that there's two opposites. You got antimatter, matter. You got good, bad. You got female, man. Hey, what?
Well,
so where does it all fit? The good, evil.
This is, you have to be very careful not to get stuck with any one interpretation, because then you stop moving, and then the Tai Chi experience is over.
Yeah.
Think of the etchings, the illustrations by the Dutch artist Escher, M.C. Escher, if you know those artworks, where he will show a flock of geese that are black geese flying in one direction, and then the longer if you follow that flock with your eye, you suddenly see them turn into a set of white geese flying in the other direction, and it's right there in front of you on the same page as a static artwork. Depends how you look at it. Are these black geese flying to the right or white geese flying to the left? Mm-hmm. And it's both. So the change of yin and yang, that symbol of the yin yang, those two spirals moving around within that circle, the important thing to remember is that is never standing still. Yin is always becoming yang. Yang is always becoming yin. So you can't say that yin is evil and yang is good.
Well, I mean, I guess that's
static.
They will change into each other in a moment.
I guess that's where you hear, I mean, that's the most basic representative of good, of two opposites, good and evil. I mean, sure, you can see a white and black, which, or geese flying to the left or geese flying to the right. Those are two opposites.
That's right.
And is that the point that you're trying to make, or am I totally missing the whole thing?
Well, I think that is the point I'm trying to make, because there are many teachings. I can't right now think of any specific stories, but there are many teachings or there are even jokes which say, do you want to hear the good news or the bad news? And you find that as you go through the series, that what you thought was bad news eventually becomes good news. It's like I think there's one story of a man who's captured by cannibals in the jungle, and his friend says, "Oh, that was terrible." And then he tells what happens next, and it turns out that it was a good thing that he was captured by the cannibals, because if he hadn't, something else would have happened to him, and that would have been worse. So what you think is good now may be bad tomorrow, and what you think is bad today may turn out to be a real blessing, but you don't know yet. And so the idea of being flexible is to be able to turn what appears to be bad into something good. That's the true mastery of the art of the yin and yang.
So I guess yin and yang, it encompasses pretty much everything we've been talking about. Even good, bad, left, right. Opposites. Substance.
It's the world of complementarity or duality or paradox, which is where we live.
Well, of course, yeah.
And it won't work to try to escape it or get out of it. You have to learn to make it work for you and to become the master of this paradox.
How do you do that? Back to Diane's question earlier.
How do you master the paradox? Well, all I can say is in Tai Chi, you have to stay at the balance point. You have to relax. I'm giving you rather, these deep, simple instructions of Tai Chi. Relax and move with the force. Do not resist. And if you can manage to do that,
whereas
you'll be able
says,
to make
let
the force work
be with you.
That's right. You'll be able to make the force be with you rather than against you.
I just watched that movie tonight.
What was that?
I just watched that movie tonight, Return of the Jedi.
Yeah, so there's a lot of Tai Chi teachings in those films.
Synchronicity. Oh, yeah. Thanks for that, John.
Well, thanks for your answer, and I do appreciate your show. Thanks, Laura Lee.
Oh, thanks for your participation in it.
Oh, thank you.
And back to the paradox, I always have felt that when I come face to face with the paradox, God is winking and saying, oh yeah, you found a little bit of truth here. I rejoice when I see the paradox. It's got a sense of humor to it and lightness, and it encompasses a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So I think part of this also for me personally has been to become comfortable and familiar with the unknowns, with paradox, and just accepting of those kinds of dilemmas and saying, aha, sign mark on the road. If I see paradox, I go, I'm pointing in the right direction.
Yes, but then again, the moment you try to adopt this whole notion of paradox as a kind of as a cause, immediately it starts working against you.
But
you have to be so light about it.
Well, that's a paradox in and of itself.
That's right, that's another paradox.
I don't look for them, but when I bump into them, I say, okay. But I certainly don't seek them out.
That's right.
We have Dan next. There you are. Hi, Dan.
Good evening, Laura. Good evening, Fred.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Wonderful show. Always.
And can you speak up a bit?
Wonderful show. Always a wonderful show. Fred, I have a question in my mind, and it deals with the example you gave earlier with the phone and space.
Yes.
And, okay, I guess the question is potential. In that particular situation, would the phone, where the phone is, have the potential being phone, or would the space that's not phone, as far as the most potential, I guess, of energy?
Well, if you, from the point of view of Tai Chi, I would say that they are equivalent.
Equivalent?
They are equivalent. They're different kinds of potential, but equal. They're complements, and that's why you have this yin-yang unity in that circle. So there's not one that has more potential than the other. They draw their power from each other.
So
it's like, you're talking about in mechanics, kinetic potential. If you hold an object up and you drop it, the force of gravity is giving it a certain potential to fall, but if there were no space, you couldn't access that force. It has to fall through emptiness.
An arrow shoots forward because you pulled it back.
Yeah. It's in the world of Tai Chi, when you really come to balance with it, all the forces are neutralized. There is no more opposition. Now, this is why the mystery of Tai Chi as a martial art seems to function. You relax completely and you become infinitely strong at the same time. It doesn't make any sense to the mechanical mind, but it just happens. When you are not too fast or too slow, when your timing is perfect, then your body becomes very light and very strong and dense at the same time. It's quite mysterious. And even my Tai Chi teacher did not try to explain this in words. We asked him lots of questions about it, and he said, I'm telling you how to practice this. Relax, move with precision, move with centering and focus in your mind. Move slowly and smoothly with no breaks. Do not struggle. Do not go too fast. Do not go too slow. Be in simultaneous concentration with yourself. He said, and then one day you will find that you can do things. You will be able to lift things, push things, react very, very quickly without ever having practiced lifting, pushing, or reacting quickly. It will just come to you, will fall into that moment of balance and focus. He said, then it will happen to you. You'll be surprised. You will not know how you did it. You'll try to do it again, and you'll fail.
You can't.
So then you practice again. Practice a little longer, and it will happen a second time. And then you'll forget it, you'll lose it, you won't be able to control it, it will go away. Keep practicing. After it has happened to you 3 times, 4 times, 5 times, then you'll begin to understand what it is, and then you can try to explain it to me. And that's what he said when we would press him on this question.
Well, I guess the only reason why I brought that up was because matter, looking at matter, but not looking at it as a solid object, but looking at it as a vibrational frequency, has its most potential when it's standing still. It has the greatest potential for, well, just for being, but that's where it has its most potential, in a stationary form. When it seems to be unmoving, that's when it has its most potential.
Right.
Because the whole field of possibilities is open to it. It hasn't made a choice yet, so it hasn't decided which ones it isn't, because it hasn't decided which ones it is, as Fredrick would probably say.
Yeah, that was my whole, I guess my whole paradox, or my whole thinking behind the phone or the space around it. That's why I brought it up. I mean, your explanation made sense and it answered my question, but I wanted to give you my, why I asked that question. But anyway, thank you for the answer, and have a good evening.
Thank you. I'll just say one other little point to this, because inevitably, when you talk about these things, you can't quite get it into words. And I'm going to quote my friend Terence McKenna once again, because he says many things so well. He said, these phenomena have a tendency to confound the onslaughts of the language pygmies. What he means by that is that the language pygmies, these little armies of words which we send at these phenomena to try to really describe them, you can't overtake them with words. They're beyond words. You just have to relax and allow it to come to you by a sort of grace, that you make these discoveries in your own mind, in your own body, and then you can try to clear the path to them so other people can find them.
In preparation for our next topic with Berthold Schwartz, your take on the paranormal, you mentioned it just once when you were talking about all the various phenomena that you had explored and how your mental state of Tai Chi and learning that prepared you for a new perspective on all that you came across. What is your perspective of the paranormal, A, in general, and B, people doing miraculous, quote-unquote, things in particular?
Okay. Again, this is a big topic, and I am glad you're going to have some time to talk about it with Mr. Schwartz. But for me, the miracle of touching the top of my head with my hand is a form of psychokinesis. Somehow I've made my hand float to the top of my head. If I didn't think it were my hand, if through hypnotic suggestion I didn't feel that I were connected with it, I wouldn't be able to move it. It would be an inert object which would not rise when I said to my hand, please touch the top of my head. And we see this in a lot of medical conditions all the time, where there's a kind of paralysis and we can't find any nerve damage. We don't know. There's something shut down. I would hypothesize that if a person could connect in their identity with an object, a physical object, like a book on a table, so that that book would be as much a part of their body as their own hand is in their awareness, then they could lift the book the same way they lift their hand, just by force of mind. So this is a really short description of the connection between what we've been saying and where you're going.
It's been fascinating. Fredrick, thank you so much. I appreciate your time tonight. And
thanks very much.
I know you have lots and lots more stories, so at some future date, maybe you'll come back and tell us some more.
I'd be happy to.
Been instructive and inspiring. That was Fredrick Lehrman, and again, if you're interested in learning more about prosperity consciousness through his tape course that he's done with Nightingale Conant, call 1-800-525-9000. And we'll be right back. We'll take some open phone discussion in reaction to what we've talked about over the last couple of hours. And also, I'd like to know your explanation. Fredrick has given us a wonderful one about how people can do these seemingly miraculous and impossible from our current perspective, kinds of things. We'll get some more of your discussion. Let's talk about this because I've been pondering this for a while, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. We'll give you the phone numbers in just a minute, but then we'll have a couple-hour discussion with Dr. Schwartz, who's made quite a study of himself from a scientific point of view, from a heartfelt point of view, from an exploratory point of view, and discuss this phenomenon. I'm Laura Lee.
Laura Lee on Hot Talk 570 KVI.